So when it comes to the Islamic faith, we've previously looked at the context for its growth and spread, meaning the world of Muhammad, the actions of the Prophet, as well as the main beliefs of the faith. In this particular video, we're going to look at, as you can see, the split and spread of Islam and the early kingdoms, we could say, or early ruling dynasties that use Islam as a backbone of their empires. Now, when the Prophet died, the question simply becomes, who's going to lead the faith after his death? All right, who is the new caliph, the protector and defender of the faith? Now, upon his death, Muhammad has no male heir. He has 4 daughters and no designated successor. The initial caliphs, so the main leaders after Muhammad's death, had a personal connection to him and were known as the so-called rightly guided caliphs. All of them were also selected by the elders of Medina. Now, the first of these rightly guided caliphs, his close friend Abu Bakr, violently suppressed a series of revolts. And so where you have revolts, you have dissension, and you will have factions that begin to grow. Now, the second, third, and fourth caliphs, remember, these are the rightly guided caliphs. They're all assassinated, and it led to civil war in the 660s. So about 50 years after its founding, Islam splits into 2 factions, which you can see here on the map using modern-day national borders. The 2 factions are Sunni and Shi'a Islam. Now, Sunnis, or people of custom and the community, believed that the caliph were the political and military leaders of the faith and were selected by the Islamic community. The only legitimate claim to the throne, according to Sunnis, should be through the male line. On the flip side, the Shia believed that the descendants of Ali, the 4th caliph, should rule because they were blood relatives of Muhammad, even though Ali, Muhammad's cousin, was related through his marriage to Muhammad's daughter. This is where the split occurs. The next caliph in line was related through the female line, not the male line. The Shia emphasized the importance of Imams, who had special religious charisma and allowed them to interpret revelation and law. The Shia were a minority faction who felt that the faith had taken a wrong turn. You know, there's several violent attempts at revolt failed, and to this day, the split continues. To this day, that split continues between the 2 factions. Now, Islam, when we look at the spread or the expansion, there's a couple of different ways where we look at it as it spreads out from Arabia. Islam spread through the use of the sword and military. Muhammad and his followers fought their first battle against Mecca in 624, and his use of the concept jihad justified military expansion. Now, following Muhammad's death, the early Muslims will enjoy success against the weakened empires that border them, Byzantine, Sassanid empires. The infantry would often attack first with bows, arrows, and crossbows, and they wanted to soften up the enemy so that the mounted cavalry, the strength of the Muslim army, could charge through the enemy lines. Now you can see the spread through the map. The entire Arabian Peninsula is under Islamic control by the year 634, and by 650, their empire stretches from Libya to Central Asia. And they had actually destroyed that old Persian Empire. Now, Islam would sweep across North Africa, and they would even make it into modern-day France. We can see Battle of Tours up here. They get to modern-day France, where they eventually are turned back, so they begin to retreat. but they did enjoy military success in expanding the faith. Now, the religion also spread due to the influence of the Sufis. The Sufis simply believe that the material success of Islam, you have Muhammad, who is a traitor. So wealth is an integral part of the faith. It's not frowned upon. But the Sufis believe the material success is minor compared to the search for direct experience with the divine. They want that direct experience with the divine. And this will contrast with the legal and scholarly practitioners of the faith. Now, they are viewed as the spiritual mystics who will spread the faith and do exist peacefully with Sunni and Shi'a alike. So when we look at the spread, we have military expansion and spiritual expansion through the Sufis. Now, for our purposes, when we look at the House of Islam or the early empires, Dar al-Islam, it says the Abbasids, however, the Umayyads were the true first dynasty. The members of the Umayyads will rule until the leader was assassinated. They chose, they transformed North African culture. They chose their capital city of Damascus instead of on the Arabian Peninsula. And Arabic was their official language. They chose this language in 685. They're the ones who expanded all across North Africa. And they transformed North Africa from a Christian culture with Latin as a unifying language into a Muslim culture with Arabic as the unifying language. They also instituted the jizya. As they conquered, they instituted the jizya. This was a tax on non-Muslims. Now, forced conversion was relatively rare, but the jizya was an economic incentive to convert. Now, the image you see here is the Great Mosque of Damascus, located in the capital. Now, the Abbasids, who come next, they are going to move their capital. They'll move their base to Baghdad in modern-day Iraq. And this city would become a very cosmopolitan city of about 500,000 people. Now, the city is at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe, and the residents spoke Arabic. They spoke Persian. There was Greek and Hebrew that were used. The new caliph claimed to descend from Muhammad's uncle Abbas, hence the name. All right, hence the name. So he descends from the male line of Muhammad, so Sunni Islam. The caliph will preside over the military, the bureaucracy, and the judiciary. And the vizier is the one who actually runs the government. And those who directly descend from Muhammad will enjoy special privileges. So, I guess to make a comparison, if you're familiar with Aladdin, Disney's Aladdin, Jafar's position is vizier, counselor, person who runs the government. Now, over several centuries, the Abbasids engaged in what became known as the translation movement. The writings of Aristotle, the geography of Ptolemy, and the geometry and physics of Euclid are some of the Greek works that were translated into Arabic for preservation. They are the ones responsible for spreading Arabic numerals in the Islamic world. All right, and within this Islamic world, they wrote a book on algebra. Islamic scientists calculated the radius of the earth. They measured the solar year, mapped the planets and stars, and they kept scholarship alive by translating all of these different works. The Greek, Hellenistic works, and Indian ideas. They translated them into Arabic. This culminates in the image you see, the development of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad as the center of learning. Now, interestingly enough, in the long term, the emphasis on logic, the translation of these former Greek ideas, this use of logic, will run head to head with those who emphasize the words of the Quran. Now, the empire begins to divide and fracture in the mid 800s. Local governors will assert control over their regions, and they'll formally pledge their allegiance to the caliph, but they often withhold their formal taxes from Baghdad. Now, prior to its official defeat at the hands of the Mongols in 1258, because we see 1258 as the end, that's when the Mongols run through town, the empire had fractured into the Seljuk Empire and also into Al-Andalus, or Muslim Spain, which was a continuation of the Umayyad Caliphate. Cordoba, Spain actually replaced Baghdad as the intellectual center of the Muslim world at around the year 1000. So the Islamic faith will split up into Sunni and Shi'a. It will spread through use of the sword and spiritualism. And the early empires, the Umayyad will spread, the Abbasids will enjoy success, they'll enjoy cultural victories, but that too will break up into various Muslim empires.